Welcome to Game of Leadership, the podcast for curious leaders. I'm Paula Eddie Wilcox, and today is the third episode with our wonderful guest who is talking about the pivotal moments that make them the leader they are today. I really hope you enjoy the episode. I can't wait to find out what's in store. Hi Darren, welcome back. And it is welcome back because this is your third time of being on Game of Leadership podcast. Thank you so much for joining us again.
And thank you so much for having me. And I've really enjoyed the first two episodes. So it's great to be back.
Brilliant. Well, let me reintroduce you because if people haven't listened to your two previous episodes and not met you before, it's nice to set this up in the right way. So Darren is the founder of ipsodexo.com with almost a decade of experience in learning and development sector with specialisms in leadership, personal and team development. Darren has a passion for creating impactful learning experiences and has developed a digital card platform for coaches, trainers and leaders to use during virtual meetings to engage participants in super interactive learning and facilitated experiences. His mission is to make virtual meetings interactive, engaging, and fun. So, Darren, thank you so much again for joining us. And yes, death by PowerPoint is out the window, and in comes the fantastic digital world of interactivity and fun.
Yeah. And I think I mentioned it in one of the previous episodes. One of the things I love about Ipsodexo as well is people can create their own card decks on there. So if they do want to create anything bespoke, just like say if you were creating some kind of PowerPoint presentation, instead of doing that, let's create a card deck that can, you can pop your cards on there and create something really interactive with the people that you're training or with the team that you're leading in your team meetings or whatever session it is that you've got on either Zoom or Teams or whichever video conferencing software you're using. But yeah, it's all about interactivity and engagement, really.
Oh, that's fantastic. And my brain's just racing a little bit there as I think about the game that we played last time you were on, in terms of just bringing up a single card to create and stimulate conversation. And imagine if you, instead of your 20 slides, you created 20 cards and just had a conversation. How powerful would that be in terms of a meeting around a particular subject, rather than, that traditional sense of having the slides up and everybody looking and, yawn, not really being able to get involved very much. You know what? It's certainly made me really think about how I do some speaking events. And whilst I did a really fantastic speaking event back at the end of March for a US audience, it was really, really well received. They really enjoyed it. Lots of interactivity. But next time, maybe I'll be doing some cards instead and sharing that on screen. I'm quite excited about that. Yeah, I'm quite excited about that.
I think the beauty of card decks is that you can have lots of different types of interactions with them, because you can create a card deck that might just be questions and you flip them for the answers, which is probably one of the most basic. You can have sorting card decks. So if you're, say, doing personal development, you can create some sort of card deck that may identify somebody's personality type, for example. Or you may have a sorting deck that you could get a team of people to work together to place things in a certain order, which creates a really good conversation. Or you can create a game. There's all sorts of games that you can create just with cards as well. So the power of a card deck is wonderful and flexible, because unlike with a PowerPoint slide where you go through them in order, with a card deck, you pull random cards out and you can mess them, shuffle them up, and it can be really randomized, and people can pull the cards out themselves and interact with them. It's great.
Oh, it sounds fascinating. And can't wait for it to launch. We think by the end of June. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, super. Well, okay. So what I would love to talk to you about today is something that you said in the first episode where we had you on, Darren. You were sharing about your leadership story, and you said, I won't tell you about that event because I want to save it. And we didn't come back to it because we knew we were going to record today. And today's the day that we get to find out really what made you the leader you are today. Now, that's a big question. So take your time and let's see where we go.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, in the first episode, we talked about my journey, and there were quite a few elements within that journey. But I think the bit that I said that I was going to come back to was my transition from when I was working on the front line in a housing association as a rent officer, and I transitioned into learning and development. And it was actually that part of the journey that was probably the biggest, most impactful part of my leadership journey that I could possibly imagine, really. And what happened was the organization that I was working for had a change of CEO. And when the CEO changed, they looked to change the strategic direction of the organization and the organizational values and the whole kind of culture of the organization. And the organization brought in a change expert. And as part of that change journey, they identified a few people that could potentially be internal change agents within the organization. And the CEO and this person that had come in identified me as potentially one of the change agents. I think it was from a couple of wider organizational meetings that we had where I kind of chirped a couple of ideas into the meetings and they picked up on that. But it was I think being believed in by somebody that, Darren has the potential of being able to perform this role for the organization when I didn't really even believe it in myself at the time. So somebody showed belief in me that helped me to start believing that there was something more about me than what I'd been doing for the past 11 years or so. So that was, I suppose, the catalyst that led me into starting to learn about kind of change and organizational development. And it was the training that I received from the change consultant that came in, particularly around facilitation, because one of the big things that has held me back over the years, due to my, I suppose, extreme introversion, was fear of public speaking. And and I don't mean in front of just a big audience. It could have even been 2 or 3 people, and I would have kind of hidden in the corner, I guess. But yeah, so part of the change agent training was facilitation training, and learning the kind of skills to be able to talk in front of people and engage a group of people, essentially. So learning those basic skills, I then took those basic skills and started to take baby steps in the size of groups of people that I was actually facilitating. I was petrified, I'll be honest with you, especially that first facilitation, but it went reasonably well. And essentially, I just kind of overcame the fear by quieting that inner voice that said, Darren, you can't do it, to saying, well, what's the worst that can happen, really? The worst that can happen is that I do it wrong and I try again, So I did the first facilitation. That went reasonably well. Then I did a couple more. The groups got slightly bigger. And then within a very short space of time, I was invited to facilitate the company values launch event at a hotel. So I was on the events team constructing the event and designing everything, but I was going to be the person with the microphone at the kind of, the front of the whole company of about 130 people, facilitating the event for an entire day, only 6 weeks after I'd learnt facilitation, been chosen as a change agent. So for me to come out of that kind of comfort zone of being frontline, dealing with customers on a one-to-one basis, to kind of find myself in this position with, little old Darren with a microphone in front of all of these people, it was a lot of pressure. And I mean, I've got to be honest, I probably didn't sleep even for an hour the night before the event took place. but the event went well. There was only one kind of major faux pas that came out of my mouth on microphone that day, which was, in fact, I won't even go into it now, but it was a big learning experience. But the confidence boost that it gave me, because after that I kind of felt that, do you know what, I can do pretty much anything if I just kind of apply myself and learn and take those incremental steps to be able to do it. So the change consultant that came in was a lady called Dr. Shirley Blenkinsop, and she believed in me and gave me quite a lot of coaching and development. And the impact that Shirley had on my life was absolutely enormous, but also a belief in me from the CEO of that company. It was life-changing, really. I believed in myself again, and I found direction in learning and development, and the rest, as they say, is history.
Fantastic. Wow, what a feat to have gone from, as you say, one-to-one kind of customer relationship management side of things into being thrust into the limelight, as it were, big major event on stage, having only just learnt the skills of facilitation, and to have to perform in front of an organization in that way. I mean, wow, what an achievement, and what a way to learn, almost baptism of fire.
Yeah. I remember when I was asked to do it and the word yes came out of my mouth, and then there's the inner voice going, why did you say that? Why did you say that?
Oh, that's so funny. That's often the case, isn't it, in life? You're like, why did I agree to do this? What was I thinking? What were you thinking, Darren, when you said yes? Can you remember?
Yeah, I mean, the thought process at the time was, if I don't do this now, I'm just going to let this fear continue to hold me back. Whereas if I do this, then it's never going to hold me back again, because it's never going to be this difficult again. And that was kind of what went through my mind, is that, once you've done kind of in front of 130 people, it doesn't really matter how much bigger the audience may be after that, because that amount of people, it all becomes a kind of a merged blur in front of you anyway when you're kind of speaking. And any smaller groups that you're doing after that, you're just thinking, well, I've done 130 people, I'm sure I can do 10 or 15 or 20. So yeah, that was it really. It was, I'm not going to let this hold me back anymore, I'm going to do it.
Yeah, fantastic. And I think, you demonstrated a huge shift in mindset there. So how did you hold on to that mindset then moving forwards? I mean, you've shared a little bit about the almost the story that you told yourself, in that if I can do this, I can do anything kind of thing. So how did you harness that to help support you moving forwards?
Well, it was really because in doing that, I then went full time into learning and development. So a role was kind of developed within that organization, and then it was a case of starting to develop training and workshops that could be delivered across the organization. So it was then a case of taking the skills that I'd learned and applying them pretty much continually on a kind of day-by-day basis, always reminding myself of the fact that I had done this previously. And I was still afraid on a day-by-day basis. Every single time I developed or I delivered a workshop of any kind, from a preparation perspective, I like to prepare really well for anything that I do, so that I even prepare for things that are potentially going to go wrong, and even if they don't, just so that I know in my mind that if this happens, I can do this. If this happens, I can do this. This is how I'm going to kind of cover myself. But it was really it was more then around learning more skills as I kind of went along. So then it was, doing the research and finding out as much as I could about kind of leadership development and, kind of people development, and just starting to fill in all the gaps in the knowledge. Because obviously when I first started doing it, there were a plethora of knowledge gaps, and I'm sure there still are, if I'm being honest. There's always plenty for us to learn.
Certainly are for me.
It went from, I suppose, the overcome the fear and do it mindset to the curiosity mindset of how can I now take what I've learned and build on it. And then it's just a case of you just build and build and build, and learning and being curious just becomes a kind of your ongoing mindset, essentially.
Yeah.
So, you know, what do I need to know that I don't know now? What I guess that's it, really. It's just curious. Be curious going forward, and then you just grow.
Absolutely. And you know, I said I'm sure there's lots of gaps for me too. I often say that every day is a learning day for me, and I truly mean that, because, you know, in the discussions with you and my other guests, I'm learning so much on a week by week basis. It's fascinating. And you know, we say that Game of Leadership is for the curious leader. Well, absolutely, I'm super curious, otherwise I wouldn't be doing this. You know, and it's fascinating understanding what goes on for people in their leadership journeys, and the fact that you talk about that mindset shift from, you know, just thinking you couldn't do it to what it took to make you be able to do it, enabling yourself to do it, you know, becoming curious. That really is a lovely way to put it, Darren, and it takes a lot of strength to be able to do that.
Yeah, and it also, whilst we're on the subject of curiosity and strength, it takes a lot of strength to say when you don't know something. So, I mean, another thing I suppose that held me back over the years is I didn't want to ask the questions and appear to be stupid in front of people, or if somebody said something that I didn't understand, instead of actually being curious and asking about it and finding out about it, I probably wouldn't say something, because I'd be sort of thinking, well, obviously everybody else knows, but I don't know what they're talking about, so I'm not going to ask. And then what happens? You don't learn, so you still don't know. You know, so it's just being prepared to, if you feel that you look a bit stupid on one occasion, that's fine. Ask the question anyway, because then you're not going to look stupid next time around, because you've asked the question and now you know.
Yeah. So, and that assumption, you know, we always, you know, I often hear people saying, you know, assumptions are a dangerous thing. You must never assume. And in a way, they're right. Never assume that all the others know, because I bet if you were the one that you know, stuck your head above the parapet and asked the question in the meeting, everyone else would be saying, "Oh, thank goodness Darren asked." I was thinking the same thing. But of course, we build it up into such a great big thing in our own mind. Yeah. I remember years ago sitting in meetings, and you know, I'd think I'd had this one sentence to say that would really add value to the meeting, and you stop listening to what's going on, because you're so hell-bent on when you can get that little bit of value into the conversation, that everything else just kind of blends into the background, and you lose your place. So, you know, in a way, I was kind of self-sabotaging myself in that sense. So, you know, understanding what you're talking about, assuming everyone else knows everything, and this one little thing that I'm going to add because I must say something, you know, little old me, as you've said a few times. But it's lovely to know that you're not little old Darren anymore, and I'm not little old Paula. We are, you know, we are the leaders that we are today because of all the experiences that we've had.
Yeah. I was just reflecting on what you were saying about that one thing that you wanted to throw in that added value, and thinking how many times in my earlier career I had that one little thing that I wanted to throw in to add value, but then that inner voice again was saying, but are you right? Or if you say this and it's wrong, you're going to look stupid. Yes. So I said nothing, because it's the inner voice, but it's also the introversion, and I'm over-reflecting and over-reflecting until I just do myself an injustice and then just don't say anything at all. And I've learned to quieten that inner voice as well now, so that, because the inner voice doesn't know everything and is just there to protect us. And actually, you know, it comes from way back when, and we don't maybe need quite so much protection from that inner voice as perhaps we needed when we were hunter-gatherers.
Yes, absolutely. And yeah, we do learn to quiet the inner voice over time, but it does take work. We all have confidence knocks and moments of self-doubt, limiting beliefs, all sorts of things that I help my clients with all the time. And we are human. And it's absolutely fine to have those days where we feel less able to do these things. But the great thing about leadership is that a lot of this stuff we can learn and we can improve and we can get better at showing up and contributing and getting curious and really being the best version of ourselves as leaders.
Yeah, and it's reminding ourselves that everything's a learning experience, even our failures, even our mistakes. It's all a learning experience. We'll always grow from those experiences, even if at the time it feels crushing.
Yeah.
The next day it feels slightly less crushing, and the day after that we might be thinking, "Oh, actually, I've learned this from that," and just grow from there. So,
and it's amazing what your brain can do overnight. As you reflect on things whilst you're sleeping, you don't even know you're doing it. I often say, a very good friend of mine, Amy, introduced me to the idea of it marinating in your brain overnight. It's such a great way to think about it. And it does. This stuff marinates overnight. And if you're anything like me, you'll wake up in the middle of the night and this idea will have popped into your head. So I keep a notebook next to the bed now so I can just write it and then settle down, because I know I won't forget it now. But the funny thing about that is if I write it down, I wake up and I've remembered it before I see the notepad. If I don't, everything's gone. Forget it. Forget the brilliant dream I had in the middle of the night of how successful this particular idea might be.
isn't that frustrating as well? Because I've done that so many times. I go to bed and I'm probably at my most creative late at night. So I go to bed, and very often my first hour, I haven't fallen to sleep because my mind sets running on. I'll normally have an idea that will then build on another idea onto another idea, and it'll kind of go off in some direction. And it's like, yes, I've hit on this. It's absolutely brilliant. I'll remember that tomorrow. And I wake up, and then I'm kind of, what was that thing I was thinking about last night? So yeah, I started doing the taking my pen and paper to bed with me. I think I mentioned this to you when we spoke a couple of weeks ago. And then I put some notes down, brought it into the living room the next day to kind of build on the idea, and forgot to take it back to the bedroom. And I must remember to do that.
I think subconsciously I might have wanted to remind you about that. But it would be remiss of me not to ask, as a coach, Darren, what could you do to quiet your mind down before you go to bed? And this is going to help loads of people that listen to this.
Crikey. To quiet my mind before I go to bed is a difficult one. I think I need to do something more relaxing before I go to bed, for starters. Because very often it starts to get a bit later at night and I'm still sat there kind of thinking up ideas about things, and I need to get my mind away from where it's normally at, which is coming up with business ideas and coming up with card deck ideas and things like that. So yeah, it could be some kind of mindfulness exercise, perhaps meditation. I don't really want to do exercise too late though, because that's just going to wake me up. But I need to get away from screens for sure. Maybe do some reading, lose myself in somebody else's creativity.
What about reading Game of Thrones again?
That's a good idea. In fact, my best friend is just revisiting that at the moment, and has said to me to revisit is actually really good on that particular novel. So I may do that.
Beautifully written, and as a coach, I know I shouldn't be making suggestions, but as you'd already said, reading, and I know we share the same love of sci-fi and fantasy novels and films and things. Just a bit of fun to throw in there. But Darren, what can I say? It's been absolutely epic to talk to you over the last 3 episodes. What a brilliant mind you have, and I cannot wait to see Ipso Dexo out there and see it reaching and impacting positively the fantastic leadership of people moving forwards, and how it helps them grow and develop in a very different and engaging way. So thank you for bringing your whole self to this. I've really, really loved it and really appreciate you and everything you brought to
I really enjoyed our conversation. It was a good, relaxing, able to be myself conversation, which I really appreciate. And thanks for inviting me along.
Oh, thank you. And I'm going to say it now because I already want you on again. So if you'll agree to it in the future, then we'll have you on again for another few episodes for more games and fun.
You know I will. And I'll create another card deck for it as well.
Oh, I'm excited already. Thanks so much, Darren. Look after yourself, and we'll talk again soon.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Game of Leadership, the podcast for curious leaders. Why don't you now take a moment to reflect on what you've heard and see what resonates for you? You never know, there may be some golden nuggets in there that really make sense to you and you'd like to apply in your leadership. Who knows what's possible? We all bring that different uniqueness to the way that we lead ourselves in all walks of our lives. I'm Paula Eddy Wilcox, and I really look forward to seeing you next time on Game of Leadership, the podcast for curious leaders. Bye for now.